Hi, my name is Fletcher Wimbush. I'm the president of the Hire Talent. We help entrepreneurs master the art of hiring by giving them the tools and strategies and the software technology to make executing these best practices as easy as possible. I personally interviewed over 10,000 people, and we've helped our clients hire thousands over the years using our technology tools that help streamline these hiring best practices. So today, I want to talk about the 5 things that you can do to drastically improve the chances of finding and selecting an A player. It all starts with having a really solid candidate scorecard. This is a tool that you're doing prior to even beginning your search, before you even put a job post out there. You've got to clearly define what are the qualities, the attributes, the skills, experiences, abilities that your next A player is going to have. After you've done that job analysis and you've identified what those things are, we want to define them clearly. So if the quality is motivation, I want to give that a clear definition of what I mean by motivation. So somebody who's willing to go the extra mile, put in the extra work, who is going to figure out problems and solve them on their own, using their own initiative. That might be a definition of motivation that you might use. Or you might have something that's slightly different. But once you've clearly identified these attributes and you've put them into the must-haves, nice-to-haves, and absolutely not the deal breakers, and gotten rid of all the things that don't matter that much, you have a clear North Star to who it is that you're looking for. You can craft your marketing message around that to target those people more specifically. And more importantly, once you get into the candidate evaluation phase, you're laser focused on the things and the qualities, the attributes that matter absolutely the most for this person to be successful in the role that you're hiring for. Now, how do you figure out whether they have these qualities or not? So there's 4 main things that I like to use. So you have to have a structured interview, one that's repeatable, one that you can do over and over again, no matter who the candidate is, what the role is, and it's universally applicable. And that doesn't mean you don't have role-specific questions or things like that. But there are some 2 key interview questions that we're going to use and we'll talk about in a second. The second is you got to have powerful assessment tools, and not ones that just focus on something like personality, which is a pretty minor part of predicting success. It's actually a better predictor of who's not going to be successful, by the way. But one that covers the whole person, both their aptitude, their behavior, personality fits, as well as whether they're going to be a culture fit or not. Maybe even some skill tests in there. So you've got structured interview, you got complete assessments that cover the whole person. Third, you have you check and speak to references from their previous direct supervisor. This is such an often overlooked thing. People think today that you can't actually get references. You absolutely can from A players. From everybody else, you can't. Simple as that. Lastly, you want to use working interviews. You get to the final phases of the hiring process, and this is a good way to give people a job trial, to give them an opportunity to determine whether they want to do this job. And it gives you an opportunity to see what the first day of work was. You ever hired somebody, they show up for their first day of work, and you get this sinking feeling like, oh no, I made a huge mistake. Well, working interviews are great for that. And sometimes we give them a task. We actually work alongside other people in a similar role. Sometimes it's a job shadow. Some jobs are just not as conducive for that, but at least we get to spend a bunch of time with that person. Maybe it's a project. So developers or marketing people, a lot of times we can give them a small project. We can see how they build that landing page or tackle this little mini project, something like that. So those are the 4 main techniques. Now let's jump into them just a little bit. What do we mean by structured interview? Well, there's 2 interview questions I use universally. One is the significant achievement question from my friend Lou Adler. I think there's multiple versions of this, but it's really laser focusing in on what they accomplished in certain roles. Most recent roles, previous roles, whatever part of their career I'm analyzing, I want to dig into what was that achievement? What were the metrics? How are they compared to others? So those are a few different ways of tackling their significant achievement. And what it tells me is what they're really good at, but it also tells me the things they're not as good at. Because we're going to spend all our time focusing on the things that they're the best at. That means everything else is secondary or maybe non-existent. The second question is the reference question from our friends at Top Grade. They call it TORC. This question is crucial. So it's simple. It sets up the checking of the reference that I talked about. But hey, who was your previous supervisor at the last role or the role before that or the role before that? What was her name? What was their title? What was the relationship with them? I'm validating that they're a legitimate reference. And if we got further along in the process, could you get them on the phone with me to speak for 5 or 10 minutes to talk about their experience working with you? It's a simple yes or no. And if it's a no, we now know everything we need to know. Because our mothers taught us if we had nothing nice to say nothing at all. If this person was a rock star, their last 4 supervisors would have no problem jumping on the phone with you and just saying absolutely amazing things. It's tried and true. I've done it over 10,000 times. Second, so we get to the assessments. We want to have that strong behavioral aptitude. Those 2 things help us predict whether somebody's going to be good or a high performer. When those 2 are in alignment with the role, they have the intelligence, the communication, people skills. Those are all aptitude things, abilities, maybe specific skills like leadership, sales, attention to detail, math, Excel, you name it, whatever it is, that's all falling in the aptitude department. That means their ability to get things done, assuming that they can be trained or are already trained to do the job, is going to be much more likely to be effective. Personality, like I said before, might be a bit of a better predictor of people's inability, but I want to make sure I put extroverts in those extroverted jobs and introverts in the introverted jobs. And I don't want to mix those up because an extrovert doesn't want to do a bunch of detailed organization paperwork and vice versa. An introvert probably doesn't want to be doing a bunch of cold calls and dealing with clients all day over the phone if they don't have to, right? So if those 2 are in alignment, you're much more likely to have a highly effective individual. Now, lastly, probably most importantly, the glue that holds it all together is whether this person's a culture fit. And if they're not, then they're probably a problem generator or a talented terror. And we don't need those people, no matter how good they are at their job. Eventually, if they're a talented terror, that relationship's going to fall apart. They're difficult, they're argumentative, they're offensive, they don't take responsibility for their own actions, maybe downright unethical, mean, all sorts of terrible things, right? So we want to avoid those folks. And a strong assessment lineup that covers behavior, culture, and aptitude can really help get us much further down the road to understanding whether we have a talented team player or a problem generator. References. When you get done with the interview, we set it all up, right? We got confirmation that we should be able to be able to get these references. We're actually going to have the candidate go out, set those appointments up for us to be able to speak to these individuals. And we want to speak to at least the last 10 or 15 years of people. So that's somewhere between 3 and 4 previous supervisors. And if it's more than that, you're probably already in trouble. So each of these calls take 5 to 10 minutes. It's worth every minute of it. And then lastly, the working interview. We want to set that up so that they get real experience with the job and who we are and what they're doing. And we get to see what they might be like once they're on the job. Create a strong candidate scorecard. Get your North Star, laser focusing on your ideal candidate. You use a structured interview, taking care of the 2 most effective interview questions, the achievement reference question. Use a complete assessment, behavioral, aptitude, culture fit. Check those references, speak to those previous supervisors, and do the test run working interview. Each one of these techniques is proven to move the needle in predicting on the job success. You move them, you put them all together, you're predicting up to and over 90% of the time. It's so important to use these techniques in combination together. Start doing that. Your hiring results will get better tomorrow. Just ask the thousands of clients that we work with.